Mary wants a raise. Instead, she has to mastermind WJM's new fun news format. Everything should run smoothly as long as no one tells Ted he's the straight man. Oops! Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows, and today we're going to be talking about, I would say, possibly the most influential show we've talked about yet.
Wow.
I don't know if you agree with that, but
That's saying quite a bit. Over
Yeah.
In Search of and
well, yeah,
White Shadow.
Love Boat.
8 is Enough, which influenced me more
Yeah.
than any of those shows. But if you're talking
Certainly, I
influenced-
mean, you've got already 6 kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still growing.
Right.
Yeah. It's definitely an influential Titanic show in television history, yet one that doesn't seem to have syndicated as well as you might think it would.
Yeah, that's weird. I read that. At least initially, it didn't do well in syndication.
Yeah, I think it's kind of notorious as being considered a failure in rerun syndication, and I don't really know why that is, but I didn't watch it very much growing up. Did you?
I don't remember watching it a lot, but I do have this vague memory of sitting on my mom's bedroom floor while she was doing stuff and had it on. And it was like a daytime rerun, and it probably would have been, a year or two after the show ended. Mm-hmm. Maybe even while it was still, like the last couple of years it was on, I don't know. But that and Donahue. I remember watching this too. Show for some reason, but I don't think I ever watched it until like the 90s when it was on Nick at Night.
Yeah.
And then I got into it.
That kind of brought it back for a lot of people. I know, like, a lot of my television viewing was split between, like, really older shows or more recent shows. And in the middle were kind of some of these shows like this and the Bob Newhart Show. Mm-hmm. It's network stablemate. And they just seem kind of more like grown-up shows, more adult shows.
Yeah.
And I think, like, a lot of what I watched in reruns, it was dictated by what TV was showing in that window after school and before dinner or something like that. And
Right.
Mary Tyler Moore, I think, was more of an evening show and was treated a little bit differently in syndication. So even if it was on, it just wasn't necessarily on my radar.
Yeah. Like the Bob Newhart Show, I still haven't watched a lot of, for no good reason, because I like him and I know it's funny. But that I remember being on in reruns on TBS a lot, kind of in the early evening. But I don't think Mary Tyler Moore was. So it seems like that was more successful in rerun or in syndication.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't very much exposed to either one of them, so
Yeah.
I didn't really watch them until I was more of an adult myself. So I don't have that sort of built-in affinity or knowledge base with the shows I have for some of the other things we've talked about that I grew up watching. But they just seem like, and Mary Tyler Moore Show is one of those. It just seems like a grown-up show. The whole aesthetic of it. It looks grown up. It's based in a version of reality, ensemble shows with grown up characters.
Right. Like I mean, it feels like that, and I guess Bob Newhart, because they started around the same time, or the beginning of that kind of show, of the Cheers, Taxi, etc. kind of show, and of course they have a lot of creative people in common. James L. Brooks and Alan Burns, who did Taxi, and I believe Ed Weinberger was involved in Mary Tyler Moore, and like they established that template, and it's on film instead of video, and it doesn't feel as like a stage play the way like the Norman Lear shows kind of feel. But it's basically about people at work.
Now, and having said all that, I will say if it had been on before The Honeymooners at 11 o'clock, I probably would have watched this.
Right.
Because The Odd Couple isn't exactly a kid's show either.
That's true.
Although it had kids on it time to time again, but definitely two middle-aged guys in New York trying to find, or just exploring the single life and doing things like that. It's not really a kid's show either. But yeah, Mary Tyler Moore is not one that I grew up watching a lot, but I appreciate a lot more now. Despite not doing so well in syndication, its reputation, I don't know if I'd say it's only grown, but it certainly hasn't diminished over the years. And it a lot of times tops critics' polls and Entertainment Weekly, TV Guide. They'll rank it high. Everybody will give it props in their lists of the best TV shows of all time. So it always gets recognition there.
And it was a pretty successful show in original run, like a top 10 show.
It was, although I don't think it was ever as big a hit as you might think it was. It seems like looking back, it was for a while. It was part of that fabled Saturday night CBS lineup that everybody points to. Like, well, people actually used to put real shows on television and try to win the night or win the week. All in the Family was the real powerhouse for like 4 or 5 years in a row. I think it was the number one show in the 70s. And Mary Tyler Moore show, I don't want to say it rode the coattails, but it was riding the coattails a little bit, I believe. It was never really the ratings blockbuster, I think. I think it was more like a case of it was part of a cog on the wheel in a very successful night, but All in the Family was really the flagship at the time.
So what was the other show?
MASH Newhart was on for years, Bob Newhart. They moved some things around, and if you go back and look at some of the grids, they would try to sandwich some different shows in there, especially that 8:30 slot after All in the Family. But I think All in the Family was the one that they kind of saw as the bell cow for the evening and kind of started things off. But it did have seven seasons and 168 episodes and
29 Emmys.
A staggering 29 Emmys.
Yeah.
And I think about 3 years in a row it was won the Best Comedy Emmy. And there's definitely something to be said for that. It was an extremely popular show. There's no doubt about that. But another odd thing is it took forever, seemingly, for it to come out on DVD. Mm-hmm. And they only had like half the show on DVD for years until I think it seemed like it took some lobbying from Oprah Winfrey, of all people, to get Fox to actually release a complete series set and get the whole show on DVD. So for a show that's as well remembered as it is, it just hasn't. The numbers don't necessarily seem to back that up as far as commercial success, but it does seem to enjoy a critical reputation that's been undiminished for all these years. It
did have not one but 3 spin-off shows.
That's quite an accomplishment too.
Which was a trend then, of course, with all the Norman Lear spin-offs. But Rhoda and Phyllis, and then Lou Grant, which we'll just say this is, in a way, this episode is part 1 of 2, in that the next episode we're going to focus on Lou Grant and the idea of that being a spin-off and a unique sort of spin-off.
Yes.
In a way.
So we'll talk about that series a little bit more at another time, but Phyllis was not a successful spinoff, but Rhoda was a very successful spinoff, and was kind of a smash hit out of the gate when they spun off that Rhoda character, and some creative decisions apparently killed that show. I was never a big fan of Rhoda at the time. Now, kind of going back and revisiting Mary Tyler Moore's show now, I appreciate that character more. I don't know if I'd be as eager to get back into that show or try that show.
I've only seen a few episodes of that, and I don't remember being totally into it.
I'm not a fan of aggressive mother characters, and that's Nancy Walker character is kind of like a channel changer for me.
Yeah.
In anything more than small doses, so...
I think I'm not a fan of her, of Nancy Walker.
Yeah, really?
Maybe. I don't know. Too many bounty ads?
Are you a fan
She was the bounty ad, right?
You a fan of paper towels?
I like paper towels, yeah. And
bounty paper towels in particular?
I'm fine with them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a quicker picker.
Starting to sound like we're really big fans of bounty paper towels right now.
Yeah. I don't remember what our go-to brand was when I was a kid.
Was it store brand? I think that was one of my go-tos. Still
sometimes,
is in many ways.
Yeah,
that ubiquitous store brand.
Right.
I think that's probably the leading brand in the country if you add everything together. But
yeah.
Nobody does commercials for Store.
No,
Nancy Walker never did commercials for Store.
she sure didn't.
The Rhoda character is an interesting contrast, though, and especially in these earlier episodes, she's a big part of, even though it's a workplace comedy, and I guess she was a popular enough character to spin off, and that's a testament to the Mary Tyler Moore show's success. Now, Rhoda aired concurrently, Phyllis aired concurrently, Lou Grant, though, aired after
Yeah.
the Mary Tyler Moore show ended its run, just to point that out. But
Like the whole decision of like, okay, this character is so popular on this show. Let's get her off this show.
yeah,
Give her own show is interesting. I don't know. I guess I would have mixed feelings about that as a viewer. Like
yeah,
I like the Mary Rhoda friendship, so in a way you don't want to see them not together.
yeah.
And then it doesn't seem like they ever replaced that exactly. I mean, they had
Right.
other female characters, but they're not. It's not the same thing. So I don't know if like back then I would have been, if I had been a viewer, would have that bothered me, or would have been like, oh, I get more Rhoda.
Yeah.
Like she only had 2 scenes an episode or something, and now she gets every scene.
I'm pretty confident. To me, I think that sort of retroactively, maybe people think a little bit differently about the show than they did at the time. Obviously, I can't say that for sure, but me, I think I would have enjoyed the workplace aspects of it, not so much the Mary and Rhoda. Mm-hmm. But when they did a reunion movie, it was Mary and Rhoda.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't Mary and Murray.
Right.
Hey, that'd be kind of a cool one, actually, now that I think about it. But it seems like a lot of people really fondly remember that Mary Rhoda friendship, but
Yeah.
it really wasn't the creatively. The show spent a lot more time at the workplace.
Right.
I think maybe it started out. The whole idea was, oh, Mary needs a friend because she's navigating this whole new world. And
Right.
I guess as they sort of abandoned that and became more about the workplace elements, the Rhoda character wasn't as necessary. And I think as a viewer, I would have been okay with that because
Yeah.
I'm not as interested in stories. I'm not even as interested in stories about Mary's dating life, things like that. I really like seeing the newsroom
Yeah.
setting is what
Right.
appeals to me about the show.
Okay. That's fair.
Uh-uh.
I
Good
could, but I could see a lot of people.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Because it is they have good chemistry,
right.
and that's appealing.
Yeah, and I think that is a big part of the show for a lot of people. But
Like Phyllis, I don't get. I've never understood enough about that character to like understand why she would have a spinoff.
Yeah.
And even what little I do know, I mean, it seems like she's not. Like she's a little bit of a. An antagonistic character. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's Mary's friend. And I did rewatch the pilot episode, and she's actually her friend from, I don't know, they're longtime friends, and she helps her get her apartment. But even in that, she's a little bit like selfish and
yeah,
a good supporting character, yeah. But you think, does she? Why would he give that character? Maybe just she wasn't fitting on the show, and they didn't want to fire Cloris Leachman.
yeah. I guess they saw Cloris Leachman as a big enough asset to try something with her. But
Yeah.
I think they smoothed over some of those rough edges in that character as the years went by. But I think it made the character less distinctive too, as you're saying, and
Yeah.
maybe less fertile ground for a spinoff. So
Right.
that one I don't understand, and I think America pretty much agreed with
Yeah.
us on that one and didn't really support it.
Right.
So
And I guess Betty White's character kind of filled some of that space,
Right.
But more in the workplace.
yeah, she was more kind of
Abrasive.
a heel character they
Yeah.
brought on
Right.
as more of an outright villain, as her promiscuous,
Right.
man-hungry character, I guess. Rhoda's man-hungry, but she's looking for a guy to settle down with
Yeah.
and marry her,
Right. Yeah.
which was that's pretty much the main thrust of her character. It seems like in a lot of those episodes, it's her just cracking jokes about how she's still single, and
Yeah.
Mary has her pick of guys, and
Right.
she's desperate.
Yeah.
Which, I guess a lot of people can seem like one-note characters until you give them a chance to broaden it a little bit. But like I said, I do find myself appreciating the performance in that character a little bit more now, but it's definitely not the big appeal for me.
Yeah. So the show itself, of course, is about Mary Richards, who moves from small town Minnesota to the big town of Minneapolis, St. Paul. She gets a job in a newsroom.
Yes.
Kind of by accident. Like, if you watch the pilot, she goes in to interview for a secretary job, and that's been filled. And Lou, who's smashed, hires her to be an associate producer. Something she's never done before.
Pretty big upgrade.
Yeah. Although it pays less than the secretary job.
Yeah, it's probably a less desirable job, really.
Yeah. She moves there to get away from... She was involved with a guy and kind of supported him through medical school, and then realized it wasn't going anywhere.
Yes,
And he shows up in that first episode, and good riddance to him.
yeah, let's point out it's not Rob Petrie.
No.
It's not Dick Van Dyke.
No.
As legend has it, CBS was anxious to assure people that she wasn't leaving
Right.
Rob Petrie.
Yeah, and they wouldn't allow her... The weird thing, they wouldn't allow her to be divorced.
Yeah,
But it was okay that she had lived with a guy.
yeah, yeah. That's it's interesting because just to mention, Mary Tyler Moore had been on the 5 seasons Dick Van Dyke Show, another classic sitcom that, much like Mary Tyler Moore Show, pretty much went out on its own terms when it thought it had said enough.
Right.
So that was several years before this. It ran 5 years in the 60s,
And that was like early to mid 60s, right?
yeah.
So there
like,
was a
kind of like
decent gap.
starting with, yes, it was, and I guess they had, I think it was a variety special that she appeared on with Dick Van Dyke, actually, that encouraged CBS executives that she could carry a show on her own. Mm-hmm. She could make it on her own, as the song
Right.
refers to. So, yeah, she's starting over.
Yeah.
She's got this job at,
WJM
not the premier network in Minneapolis, to be sure.
doesn't seem like it.
It's a bit of a low-rent operation.
Yeah.
Staffed by it's interesting because there seem to be good people working there that know what they're doing, but the station we constantly hear is not the best station, and they're low rated. And they have basically an incompetent buffoon as their anchor for the 6 o'clock news, which is what Mary Tyler Moore's main is the associate producer for.
Yeah. So that's Ted Baxter, played by Ted Knight, and then they have Lou Grant, played by Ed Asner, and he's the what is his job title?
He changed a couple times. I think he's just a producer of the telecast, I think.
Yeah.
And then later he becomes like news director for the whole station, which gives him dominion over. I'm not a fan if they've got an 11 o'clock newscast or not, but
I don't know.
It seems like he runs the whole news department.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's his title.
Right. And then Murray Slaughter, played by our old friend Gavin MacLeod. And what is his job?
He is...
Is he a producer?
I'm not sure what his title is. I mean, he's writing virtually all the copy.
Right.
So I guess he's an editor.
Yeah.
Like a senior editor.
Okay.
I'm sure he's got like an official title that I just don't know. But
yeah, I don't know. And then various other people, supporting people, like in the episode. We're going to talk about John Amos plays Gordy the weatherman. Mm-hmm. And I guess they have sports people. Yeah.
Yes, they do.
And the Betty White character is, when she appeared, she was a part of she had a show, a cooking, some other show on that channel.
Yeah, like was the Happy Homemaker.
That sounds right.
Yeah, something like that. So they wound up getting a pretty big cast, and it expanded over the years as any show will through 7 seasons. But that's pretty much the core of it right there.
Yeah.
And should we mention this? This episode is the first episode of season 3, and it's called The Good Time News. Mm-hmm. It premiered September 16th, 1972 on CBS at 8:30. And I think this is kind of an interesting episode because it shows things that go on in the news industry, and Mary Tyler Moore Show. I don't think they always did that, but this sort of looks at some more global TV news and journalism issues, while also getting into some of the gender issues that, again, I think there's kind of a narrative nowadays that Mary Tyler Moore Show was groundbreaking, and I don't doubt that in many ways it was.
Yeah.
But I think if you watch a lot of the episodes, it really a lot of the groundbreaking aspect is, okay, it's just built around a single woman who's independent.
Right.
But it wasn't like something that they were out there being particularly socially conscious, I don't think.
No, I don't think, certainly not every episode, probably not most, were specifically about just the nature of it existing. Makes it about that and groundbreaking, which in a way is, to me, more effective than sort of having a theme every week of you're showing feminism by just having her do that.
Right. And we may get into that when we talk about the Lou Grant series, actually.
Yeah.
And even this one, it sort of brings up, it has the guise of bringing up a gender-related issue, but it treats it, to me, it kind of treats it as a secondary issue, and ultimately it's kind of a punchline.
Yeah.
So I expected them to kind of get into it, and then it
Right.
goes a totally different direction.
Not just the gender part, but the whole subject of it is oddly timely now, I think. Including, like, I mean, there are some phrases in there that are very 2017,
Right.
2018.
So you're talking about, I mean,
But
maybe we should talk specifically, I see, like, there's two different issues here.
Yeah.
There's one that sort of bookends the episode.
Right.
And that's that Mary, at the beginning of the episode, they have a conversation with Rhoda, and or she has a conversation with Rhoda that sort of sets up the plot, that they're going to have the meeting with the station executive.
Yeah.
And that's as another big function of Rhoda's is to have exposition,
Right.
to kind of talk about what's going on at the workplace and give Mary somebody to kind of unload about on some of these things.
yeah.
But so when doing some notes for the meeting, she finds out that the man who had the job before her got, was it $50 a week?
Yeah.
$50 a month, $50 a week more than she did
Right.
for the same job.
Yeah.
Now, there's no other context for that.
Right.
I guess we can assume that he had a similar level of experience. I find it hard to believe that he applied for a job as a secretary and got hired as associate producer,
Right. Yeah.
like Mary did, with
Yeah.
no background in journalism,
Right. Yeah.
which might explain some of the the disparity in pay. But they don't explain that. And to be fair, this I guess it's Mary's third year in the job, so it's not like she's totally started.
Right. Yeah, and she's definitely good at her job by that point.
Yeah,
in the
it
show,
seems
I
like
think.
it.
Yeah.
Mostly. I mean, they don't. That's something that it's really not part of this episode. But a lot of times, she kind of learns on the job, and it seems like it's always an ongoing process. And I mean, one episode I watched had saw her getting to run the newscast while Lou's in the hospital, and it's kind of a battle to get everybody to take her seriously.
Yeah.
And part of it maybe is because she's a woman, but it's more seen as because it's Mary and it's not Lou.
Yeah.
So, but the point being, though, in this episode, she brings up the wage gap and complains to Lou about it.
Right, and he really doesn't have a good answer.
He doesn't know. He dismisses it.
First, he says, well, he has a family.
Yeah, actually, first, I think he doesn't. He say like,
Oh, because you're a woman.
yeah. He actually just comes out and says it.
Right. And then he's like, or he says, has a family, and that kind of shuts her up.
Yeah, he
For a
challenges her to come up with a
Yeah.
response to that, and she does.
Right, which is that, so if he had 3 kids instead of 2, would he have gotten more money, based on that?
Yeah,
And Lou doesn't have an answer to that.
yeah. And it's interesting. So they get back to this issue later, but Mary is a little bit upset, and they don't really drill that home. But when they have their lunch meeting with this executive, he puts forth his premise that because the ratings need to be better, and he wants to make it more about entertainment. He wants to make the news more entertaining. Lou disagrees with this instantly.
Yeah.
And the guy says, well, he would like another opinion, and Ted demurs. He doesn't want to get put on the record, so he pretends he's coughing. And then he asks for Mary's opinion, and Lou says, well, it's going to be the same as mine.
Yeah.
And he says, well, is that true, Mary? And she says, well, no, actually. And I'm not sure, did you interpret it as that? I think she genuinely believes that she wants to give it another chance, but
Yes.
okay, so you don't think that she's doing that to get back at Lou
No.
because of the $50 a week thing, that she just wants to have her opinion heard for
Right.
the sake of it.
And I think, given her generally sunny disposition,
Yeah.
that she might see some value in this.
Right.
And then in the later scene where she confronts Lou about it, he accuses her of doing it just to get a raise, and she seems genuinely hurt by that
Right.
accusation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't interpret that way either, but
Yeah.
I think at least one review I read of this episode online did interpret it that like that was part of why she did that. But I didn't get that at all the way the scene came out.
No. She might have maybe just wanting to air her opinion was because of that, but I don't think the actual opinion was false.
Right. And in fact, they I think in the same scene that Lou raises that to her, they're at a bar at happy hour, kind of going over the meeting, and it pretty much diffuses that idea right away.
Right.
Because Mary brings up an idea and Lou goes along with it. He likes it and seems to kind of forget the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's not bitter about it anymore.
Right. Other than to put all the entire job on her.
Right.
Of reformatting the news.
Yeah. Well, he gives her the opportunity to run with it.
And that does seem a little spiteful.
Yeah. Well, and
like
a little unrealistic too.
He doesn't want to do it. So I understand that, but also like, well, you agree with it, so here you go.
It seems like more like it's spiteful, but not personal against Mary. It's spiteful more in the sense that like, well, the guys at the suits upstairs aren't going to listen to my judgment on this, so whatever, you try it your way. But I've been on the record against this.
Yeah.
He says, this is news we're talking about. He's kind of more hardcore that he doesn't want inane banter between news anchors.
Yeah, he's very, he comes from newspapers. He's very old school about that, and they keep giving this example of this other channel in town that has great ratings, but is doing the thing we mentioned on the Punky Brewster in a way of like cheerfully introducing a very uncheerful story.
Yeah.
And this is when they're talking to the head of the station about it, Lou says, this is the part that's very now, that news is truth, Jack, and I'm not going to make it into something fake.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Nicely said, Lou.
Yeah. I assume, though, of course, Minneapolis is a metropolitan area, but, there's probably a lot of quaint news there that Lou's not wild about reporting.
Right. And Lou's definitely got some unprofessional sides to him. For example, his glee at learning that Mary's idea will mean personal offense to Ted.
Yeah.
And so her idea is to use Gordy, is to pair Ted up with somebody who is likable.
Right.
And can be entertaining and kind of do like more of the lighter side of things. And
yeah, because that's part of it is that Ted is the kind of person who thinks he's entertaining and isn't.
Right. Which is,
but also needs to think he's entertaining.
Yeah.
So, whereas Gordy is likable and intelligent and
yeah.
And again, I guess that you could say there's a little bit of that showing a social thing without really pushing it. That John Amos is African American, and so then you have a co-anchor team. One African American and one white guy.
Yeah.
Which was I don't know if it was normal by then, but by the late 70s at least, or in the early 80s it was. In Atlanta it was.
And now of course you have to have a female in there.
Right. Yeah. And that probably even it seems like by then that 10 years after this episode that was the case.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Usually a man and a woman.
Like especially like an urban market or a big city, you'd have to have one African American of either gender and at least one female.
Yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, I don't watch a lot of local news, but I think if I went to like another city and saw like two white guys sitting at a desk, I'd think it was very unusual, unless one of them was just come over was sitting in to do weather or sports or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Also, if you just saw one person, I guess you see that sometimes.
A lot of the smaller markets, and I think in different time slots, but as far as like a flagship news station,
right?
It's a little unusual, yeah.
And like when they show the setup of their current before this new format, it's just like Ted is standing at a podium, in front of a mat.
Yeah, it's very low frills,
right?
No frills.
Like not even sitting at a desk.
Yeah,
he's giving a lecture on the news that he probably doesn't understand.
Yeah, well, and he certainly doesn't understand this new format.
No.
And actually, the kind of one of the funny things is how Lou wants to break it to him. He tells him while he's doing a newscast that there's going to be a big change in the format of the show, which is kind of where you realize, okay, Lou's he may have this journalistic integrity, but he's not above settling some scores. I guess their relationship kind of changed over the years, but he does have more or less this argumentative relationship with Ted. And
Yeah.
sort of resents having him as his anchor.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Ted briefly quits.
yeah, very briefly.
During the commercial break, Gordy comes over and starts, and that, of course, is Lou knowing how to manage this guy.
Right.
Gordy starts reading a story, and
Yeah, effortlessly.
yeah, Ted walks right back on.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in the. He was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
impression, false start impression.
he proudly tells everybody that's where he was. Thank you
in
for
the-
filling in for me.
I was in the bathroom.
Well, but that's very true, though. You never give anybody a chance to replace you and show that they can do something as good as you.
That's true.
That's why I'm never going to miss a day of this podcast, I'll tell you. Because I realize if I call in sick one day, somebody you might call up somebody from our crack research team to sit in this chair.
Yeah.
And bam, that'd be it for me.
Bobby from the orchestra.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody a little bit so and so. I mean, yeah, but the point being, you don't give anybody a chance to fill in for you. Ted realized that too.
Yeah.
So what they do is they're doing rehearsals, I guess, and
Yeah.
Ted doesn't realize what the rationale is behind the format.
Right. Which is that he's the straight man.
Right.
And Gordy's the entertaining person.
Yeah, and I guess he's fine with the setup until he finds that out.
Yeah.
And then when he finds that out, he ruins it by thinking
Right.
that he should be allowed to be entertaining and wants to show his personality.
Mary and Lou and everyone knows, just don't tell Ted that that's the situation. But the station manager guy, he blows it like right before they go on the air.
Did you notice who played the station manager guy? Because I totally did not. He was on another. He was on one of your favorite shows of all time. And I did not recognize him, and I was shocked. He's been on many series as recurring roles, but he was in a more modern show. And I can't remember the first name of the character now. But he was actually a Sabatka, the older Sabatka on The Wire.
Not Frank Sabatka.
No, Frank Sabatka is.
Did he have a dad or an uncle?
It was. We'll have to have the crack research team look at that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was so stunned by it, I didn't even remember the guy's name.
I didn't know there wasn't. I don't remember an older Sabatka. Or was he he was the dad of Pablo Schreiber's character?
Yes, I think he was the one that
brother.
that ultimately. Yes, not the brother of Frank. I
Like
should remember the guy's name.
Frank's uncle.
Yes,
Or yeah, okay.
I guess Robert Hogan is his name.
Huh.
And
I wouldn't have.
I was curious as to because he looked familiar, and it turned out he'd been all these different things, and I didn't recognize him from anything. I certainly didn't recognize him from that, but
Yeah.
he was in several episodes of The Wire.
Weird.
So, yet another of the endless connections between The Wire and the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Well, they're probably both in the Tommy Westfall universe. So.
Yeah, that's true. So,
And I believe Munch showed up on Mary Tyler Moore Show, right?
he must have at some point.
He traveled back in time.
Yeah, he was investigating a cold case
Right.
with roots in Minneapolis.
Yeah. So the new setup, besides involving Gordy and Ted, so in this case they're sitting down in comfortable 70s chairs.
Yeah.
I think there's some shag carpet.
Yeah, it's very.
The colors have gone from a wonderful 70s powder blue to a wonderful 70s mix of oranges and yellows and reds.
Indeed, yes.
And they're both wearing bright red corduroy blazers and white turtlenecks.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Of course, before Ted was wearing a suit, a light blue suit.
Right.
With, some sort of gaudy tie.
Yeah.
But it was very of its time. And as an aside, that I think the fashion element of the show, or the style, is interesting to look over, because you kind of see different stages of 70s fashion.
Yeah.
Like, the first season, it's very in that still 60s kind of transition.
And it was 1970, so yeah.
Yeah. And Mary's like, wearing mini skirts and kind of go-go boots and
Right.
stuff. And then even like 3 years later, she's got shorter hair, and she's in, I guess, more professional clothes.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah. And yeah, things like wide ties and everything.
Right.
Bright
right.
colors. I mean, someone like Lou Grant he's not gonna change with the times.
No.
He's
Thank
just,
goodness for that.
yeah, white shirt, tie, gray pants.
Yeah.
He's good to go.
I imagine him, well, and then this might have happened on his other show, but I imagine him cutting the grass in that outfit.
Right.
I don't think he does a lot of changes in his wardrobe on a day-to-day basis, is what I like to think.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, now I actually want to see that. Let's see Lou Grant going and mowing like a small piece of,
Well,
like a cigar hanging out of his mouth.
I did watch him in a series, in the Lou Grant series recently, playing racquetball. And I hate to disillusion you, but he was pretty much wearing
Racquetball clothes.
Yeah, he was wearing appropriate clothes. And actually,
What do you think his undershirt situation is?
you know what? I was just about to say that there's another episode where it's a sweltering hot morning, and they show him sweating through an undershirt pretty much, and just kind of mopping his forehead and looking for some fresh air. But it's
Sleeves?
as I recall, it was a sleeveless undershirt.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's
And obviously boxers.
well, I don't know if I don't think they shot him below the waist.
Yeah,
but
a guy like that.
yeah, it's kind of like kind of Tennessee Williams-ish. He's almost like a young Marlon Brando, the Lou Grant character. He might not have seemed that way elsewhere, but in Minneapolis, that's pretty much like Marlon Brando when Lou Grant comes into town.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I've never been to Minneapolis.
No, I haven't
I'm just
either.
assuming.
I haven't.
You make an interesting point though about the fashions of Mary Tyler Moore's show. And maybe some of those 29 Emmys or whatever were for costume design.
They probably were. I got tired reading the list, but I know one. I think one was for Cloris Leachman. She must have come back. I assume this is just like a naming thing, and now it's like best guest actor.
Oh.
But it was like best actress in a supporting role in one episode
Wow,
of a
that's
comedy series.
Incredibly specific.
Yeah, like what? Wait, what? Yeah, all the ones I noticed were acting and writing.
Yeah, they got a slew of writing
And
awards.
The best series, probably.
Well, you know what? We shall see at the end of the season if Mary Tyler Moore's show adds some baddies
Ooh.
to its list of awards over the years. And
Yeah.
all you fashion mavens out there, get ready. Maybe there'll be a costuming category this year.
Oh.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when the newscast happens, Ted sabotages it.
Yeah, he does some things that I think are unintentional, and then he does some things that are just messing around because he's not
Right.
engaged in it.
Yeah.
Like-
He makes a Polish joke right off the bat.
That I think is unintentional, actually. I think that's him just generally trying to be entertaining.
Yes, I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that he just is. When he tries to be entertaining, he's a bore,
Right.
and I think Mary ends up telling him that.
Yeah.
Or close.
Yeah.
Or that he's boring. Something. Yeah, and some of it is like Gordy starts a story that's a presidential story, and he's like, "Oh, I do all the president's stories."
Yeah. He was there first. That's his thing.
So then Gordy is like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, John Amos is great in anything, but he's
Yeah.
just great at being sort of bemused, and like a combination of skeptical and bemused.
Right.
Just sort of rolling with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let let him do what he's going to do, and knowing that it's not going to stick to him.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's interesting, isn't it, that in 1972, the notion of a Polish joke was both a cliche and offensive
Right.
at the same time. And then years later, like when we would have been watching this in reruns,
Right.
I think it was kind of the same thing, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it changed, really, now that I think about it. I was a little surprised that it was instantly seen as just... I guess it's maybe like safe enough to make a joke about, but unsafe enough that you kind of have to address the fact that it's not something that should be done on a 6 o'clock newscast by your lead anchor.
Yeah. And basically all of this builds up to Mary telling Ted to shut up.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty big deal. I mean, her, I think, blowing her stack is a big deal. And
It is.
And, of course, the audacity of telling Ted Baxter to shut up
Yeah.
is just beyond the pale.
Well, even Lou doesn't really come out and say that to him very often.
No.
And yeah, Mary...
Because, he's the kind of personality that his ego is so giant that he has to be managed.
Yeah.
But he's oversensitive and all of that kind of stuff.
Right. And Mary's place in the workplace and the whole workplace dynamic is she's usually more deferential, and
yeah.
So it's a pretty shocking moment.
Yeah. By the way, we should say that while this is airing, Lou and Murray are sitting in the newsroom getting wasted.
Yes. That's another one of Lou's maybe... I don't know if it makes him more professional or less professional, actually.
Yeah.
For a journalist in 1972, maybe it makes him more of a newsman.
Right, yeah.
But he's very fond of the drink.
Yeah. He's got a bottle in his desk drawer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know enough, if they cover enough about why he's doing that job, why he left newspapers. Like,
Yeah.
maybe he got sort of...
I don't know.
He's kept falling down
Yeah.
because of drinking too much or something.
Yeah, it could be.
Getting sloshed, yeah. And he's, I guess, at least for some of the series, he's married.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he gets divorced during the series.
Yeah. I think so.
And, well, eventually they sort of tease a relation. They address the chemistry between he and Mary Tyler Moore.
Uh-huh.
And it just doesn't work out as a couple, but they do have an episode that addresses that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something probably worth mentioning. I think even their scenes in this episode, I think that's one of the big aspects of the show is they do have chemistry as performers. It's very fun to watch them, and their contrasts work nicely together, and definitely in this episode too.
Yeah, yeah. And she does say she loves him.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, in the bar.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's had as many as Lou has. So
no, I don't think she's had it because she found him there. He's like hiding there.
Yeah,
it's one of those.
And that's the thing. I mean, this is a very. I kind of like this episode because it focuses on sort of these journalism issues a little bit, but also reveals characterization. And I think that's one reason people fondly remember it is that it was kind of that workplace family as actual family kind of dynamic, and definitely played itself out over the course of the series. And these characters all had affection for each other, even for Ted Baxter.
Right, yeah.
And they kind of more baby-faced him as the series went on.
Right.
In a couple different ways, but they gave him a kid,
right,
a kid.
wife,
He became a family man, and they also had a couple of... Jack Cassidy played his brother, which
would probably make anyone look
great casting. And he's pretty obnoxious himself, and it kind of makes... Ted, when you see how his brother treats him, it makes Ted seem more sympathetic by comparison.
Yeah.
So
I think that's okay.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
And he's not like a malicious person.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So even then, it's just more like
Which,
and it's a classic character and performance.
Yeah. Oh, it is definitely. And now, so getting back to the story though, when Mary gives an editorial about population growth, Ted is basically making comments, and I guess. He's trying to be entertaining, but here's kind of the one point where it almost seemed like he was heckling her, and that did seem like he was almost deliberately sabotaging.
And that's when she tells him to shut up.
Yeah,
and it's on air too.
Yeah, that almost seemed like, okay, Ted's gone too far, now he's just being a jerk.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, right. But I wonder if he was or just being dumb.
Yeah.
I guess it's a fine line between mean and dumb.
That's for sure. That's true of so many things.
Right.
So many things, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a good episode.
So Mary tells him to shut up, and then they get back to, in the last scene,
yeah,
they do get back to the wage issue.
Yes.
And it's just Mary and Lou at first, and then Ted walks into the middle of the conversation. But Lou, they get fallout. They've gotten letters from like an anti-Polish defamation league,
Right,
and
yeah.
the Population Growth Council or whatever, and the FCC have
Right.
gotten complaints or something, which is just kind of a punchline, but it's kind of funny. And then she apologizes. Really, I'm not so sure it was a terrible idea on her part.
Yeah.
I'm against kind of that entertainmentization of the news, but
Right.
putting Gordy in that anchor slot seems like a winner of an idea.
Yeah, it does.
He should be hosting the show himself, really. He's great.
Right, yeah.
So I hope she didn't take it too hard.
Yeah. And you got to try new things. I mean, if there are low in the ratings, they got to try something.
Nowhere to go but up, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't work out, and Lou's basically telling her that she's apologizing. But Lou says, and he kind of makes it sound like it's independent of everything else, or maybe it seems like he admires the effort she made, but he says, you know what, Mary, I've been thinking, and, maybe I'll give you $25 extra a week,
Right.
She kind of holds out, well, and so you want the whole 50, huh? It should be the whole 50, right? She's like, right. It's like, okay, I'll see what I can do. And he's kind of slumped over about it, but just like, he's got a budget to deal with, so I'll see if I can get you but he's going to give her the extra money.
Right, yeah.
And Ted hears that part.
Right.
Says, why are you giving $50 raise to somebody who told me to shut up? And that's all I can afford.
Right. Which is a good line.
Yeah, it is a good line, and that's kind of how the episode ends on a good note. But it's just kind of interesting that I thought the episode was going to be more centered around that wage gap thing.
Yeah.
And really it was just kind of a punchline.
Right.
A side note, I mean, maybe you could argue that they were making a point and they just didn't hit you over the head with it, but they still wanted to get that idea. And I guess they did.
Yeah.
By having like the sort of audience surrogate and the protagonist, Mary, kind of makes this point that she deserves the same money. But you could argue that. I'm not going to argue against it. I'm a mellow guy.
I think that's
It's
a
possible.
reasonable argument, yeah.
But they definitely, the core of the show, I don't think is not explicitly about that.
Right. But I do think that also fits the character a little bit. Lou, especially, that he's one of those characters his initial reaction is usually going to be the negative, grumpy reaction.
Yeah.
But his heart is going to take him to the correct place.
Yeah, I think he's...
And he does admire her, and
he
just has to keep up his crusty exterior.
Yeah, I see him as conservative in the sense of conservative as in resistant to change, just period.
Yes.
And old school and sees no reason to rock the boat on things and why do things. But, and maybe... of course, there's also... You could maybe kind of glean that Lou just thinks she deserves the extra money just because she made Ted look like a jerk. I don't think, that's maybe a very, very small part of it. I think that's kind of why he's ultimately not unhappy with how things worked out, because Ted kind of exposed himself. But on the other hand, apparently they're back to the status quo with Ted doing the newscast by himself, Gordy back on weather, and Lou stuck with an anchor who can barely read the teleprompter or the cue cards.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's the big question of Ted. Like, why did they keep him around? Yeah. It would make more sense if they were like the top rated. Yeah. Then they would have to keep him around. Yeah. But I think these kind of shows are a lot of times about like, the work family, and sometimes, you keep these people around despite their flaws.
Yeah, true. Can we talk about the theme song a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, you go. No.
Actually, it's famous.
It is famous, and
it's got words.
It does have words that change. I think that's an interesting part of the show. After the first season, they changed, and again, that's part of kind of what we're alluding to, that the focus in the show shifts a little bit. Right. As Mary becomes presumably more secure. Yeah. Maybe not always at her job, but just in general in life, and realizes that, okay, she's here to stay in Minneapolis. But, I mean, if you listen to... And you said you watched the pilot. If you'd listen to that first season version and the subsequent version, I mean, they just feel differently, don't they? I mean,
yeah, I think I didn't know. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the lyrics quite enough, and then I read that after the fact. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, but I know they changed it subtly to, like, I guess in the later seasons, be more like you are making it.
Right. You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it after all. Yeah. As opposed to you might just make it after all. Okay. And in like the beginning, it starts off at first like, how will you make it on your own? And then it becomes who can turn the world on with their smile.
Okay.
Which I guess the later version, understandably, because it ran for 6 times as long or whatever, is the more famous version. But I'm not so sure it's the better version. There's just something about that first song, that little uncertainty that kind of. But I guess it just shows how the show changed its focus a little bit.
Now, I preferred the pilot credit sequence is all just that filmed footage of Mary, like in Minneapolis.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, and people remember the throwing the hat up, and that's the famous thing, and there are different shots of her. But then, of course, later seasons, as most shows do, that's intercut with shots from episodes.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a way to get the other characters in, because one of the things the other cast members don't get their credits till the end credits.
Which is an interesting approach.
Yeah. But I like that. I mean, because their character names are there.
And sometimes the scenes will play out as those credits roll.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for an ensemble, what show that became such an ensemble, that the opening is all about Mary,
right?
Essentially, and then they kind of give people their credit at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Why would they need to say starring Mary Tyler Moore? Because it's the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Yeah. It'd be very odd if it was Marlo Thomas, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Although interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if Marlo Thomas could pull off playing that, but actually, if anybody's going to play Mary Tyler Moore besides Mary Tyler Moore, it might as well be Marlo Thomas.
Might as well be, yeah.
And That Girl is probably a show that had some kind of influence on.
I probably did, and I was looking at, James L. Brooks had wrote a couple episodes of that. His early credits, because I was thinking, I couldn't remember, but it seemed like this was like almost his first thing. But I guess he'd been working for about 5 years, which still isn't that long.
Yeah.
Before you get your own, and he created that Room 6,
Room 222.
Or 222. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He's an industry legend.
Yeah.
No doubt, and has that is known for that humanity and that balance of comedy and drama and heart, for lack of a better word. And yeah, I think this is maybe his showcase, probably his showcase TV show. But of course, he's had, wow, what a career the guy's had.
Yeah.
Think about it; it's staggering.
If you looked at his TV credits, it would be staggering, and then its movie credit, the run in the 80s.
Yeah, he Terms of Endearment, Broadcast News.
Yeah,
and I guess it's tapered off a little bit in recent years.
Yeah.
He did things like Spanglish, As Good as It Gets.
Right.
But if you look at him, there's something he's going for, a certain humanity, and he's going for a certain depth of emotion.
Right.
And, Mary Tyler Moore, like we said, it's much more, it's too well crafted and well done to be seen as blatantly grabbing for that kind of thing. And I guess maybe it had its share of very special episodes, and the last episode is probably the most famous episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. But I don't think Mary Tyler Moore Show had a lot of very special episodes. Now that I think about it,
I don't think so.
It was really just more about like the comedy of the characters and sort of their shared concerns and.
Right. It's not like Seinfeld News Radio where it's only about being funny.
Right.
But it's not attempting to be overly dramatic either.
Yeah. So actually, and that brings up something that I kind of wanted to point out. I think for me, doing some preparation for this, actually, and when it's been on Hulu for a while, actually, the first 3 seasons are on Hulu.
Yeah.
And eventually, we're supposed to get the whole season. Who knows when that's going to happen? Been waiting a long time to get those later seasons and see some of these other characters and developments. But I personally think, and maybe this is a reason why I didn't watch a lot growing up or in reruns, is when I first started watching Mary Tyler Moore, part of it was kind of maybe just going from the beginning. And I've seen it in Nick at Night TV land over the years, but I'm starting to think, I've noticed the more I watch it in preparation for this, the more I like the series. And I think it's the kind of show where you really get into it, the more you like the characters, and I think you get a better appreciation for it. I could be wrong, but to me, it's not one where you see one episode and you think, boy, that episode was so hilarious. It's more because it's like character-based comedy.
Right.
At first I might be, this isn't actually one of the funniest shows as high acclaim it gets for being one of the best comedies of all time.
Yeah.
However, the more you watch it, I think the more you appreciate why, maybe it should be considered one of the best comedy TV shows of all time, if not the funniest.
So is that maybe part of why it didn't work in syndication?
It could be.
I mean, it's not entirely serialized, but there is that element.
Yeah, it could be like
of building this relationship with these characters.
Yeah, it's not as as joke driven.
Right.
I mean, in some like Murray makes a lot of the wisecracks in the newsroom. I think, especially at Ted's expense. He's not featured in this episode very much, but yeah, it does seem like sure you're laughing at Ted, and Ted says silly things, but yeah, a lot of the humor is more character based, and maybe that makes it a little bit more subtle than some of the shows that hit big in syndication. Like it's not like Gilligan's Island,
No.
where you can see it right away. The theme song tells you right away. Wouldn't it be funny if the Gilligan's Island theme song was just about like Gilligan and like he throws his sailor cap up in the air when he lands on the island, and then at the end you see the professor and Marianne finally get named at the end.
Yeah.
How different a show would that be?
It would be very different. In a way, though. I mean, Gilligan doesn't seem like a character who was making it in regular society.
No, I
think so. That just looking at the romantic attention he received, I mean, his odds went way up when he hit that island.
They sure did.
He was the youngest guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't...
Clearly unattached.
Yeah. The rich guy was married.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he wouldn't have done something, but,
Right.
Still, the implication is that he's attached. The skipper is not necessarily a specimen of physical... beauty by some standards.
By some standards.
And he's not and Gilligan's not an egghead.
No.
A dumb professor.
He's that boyish quality, that naivete that some women are attracted to.
Right. And now I'm thinking Gilligan...
he's got earnings potential after he leaves the island.
Gilligan may have been wily. He may have caused that entire...
He manipulated the crash and...
Yeah.
To achieve that
He
situation
scouted
on the island?
islands that were somehow distant enough from land that they could get to it on a crash from a 3-hour tour.
You might have something there.
I mean, I know the song doesn't really cover how long they drifted until they hit the island.
Yeah.
So it may have been... Because there is... I don't remember where they set off from. Did they set off from Hawaii or from L.A.?
I'm not sure, actually. I think it was Minneapolis, actually.
Well, and that makes... So they went down the Mississippi.
It was one heck of a voyage.
Took a right at Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And...
then that's when the weather started getting rough.
Yeah. But I was going to say, but the distance from... in the Pacific between California and Hawaii is actually like the longest distance where there's nothing. Like when you're flying, I think, from there, just thousands of miles of nothing.
Yeah.
So I guess you could drift from either of those places to an island, a remote island.
I'll buy that.
Yeah. That has cannibals on it.
Yeah. So the premise of Gilligan's Island is totally credible.
Yeah,
what you're saying.
I think so.
We're getting closer and closer. Listeners, if you're willing to support the Battle of the Network Shows podcast, maybe someday we can have our dream, my dream spinoff of the 50s and 60s. And we'll go into Gilligan's Island in more detail. It's all connected, though, really. It's television, Mary Tyler Moore, The Wire, Gilligan's Island. It's like a straight line.
It really is.
It's really like an equilateral triangle. Yeah. Those three sides of the same coin, something like that.
Yeah, right. Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we need Leonard Nimoy to come in and clear this up for us. Our unified theory of television is not about Tommy Westphal, it's about Leonard Nimoy.
Right.
He'll explain it for us.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about Mary Tyler Moore's show?
I like it. I mean, when I watched it in the 90s, or again, whenever I started watching it, I really enjoyed it. I wonder if, I wasn't watching it like every night, and I don't know if Nick at Night was airing it in order, because I just feel like I've seen a random assortment of episodes, and that it would be a little confusing to watch one from the early years and then be watching one later, and suddenly Betty White's there and Ted's married, and like, where did this Georgette person come from?
Yeah.
And I was watching like the Dick Van Dyke Show at the same period, so it was like, even though I had known who Mary Tyler Moore was my whole life, it was my introduction, I guess, to what she could do.
Yeah, and she's great.
Yeah,
she's a great comic actress.
Yeah,
the whole cast is brilliant on the show.
Oh yeah,
the writing's good. You can see why it's a good show, and I think despite some of what we said about maybe some of the indicators aren't there commercially, it holds up to me for sure, and I'll be watching more of it.
Yeah, me too. I wish Hulu had more.
Yeah,
to watch.
So do I. That's something we were saying about a lot of these shows, and those Mary Tyler Moore shows in particular. But this is the show that essentially spawned MTM Productions and
right.
gave us all kinds of quality television, some of which we talked about here, and some of which we might be talking about later. But so just for that, it's influential, just for what it spawned.
Yeah, and it's forgiving, especially in the writers' breaks or their next step or whatever.
Mm-hmm. If you look at it, so many people got their start on this, from producers, writers, and talent went on to go on other things. So honor talent, that is. So definitely deserving of its place in television history. Even if I'm still not sure that it's our most influential show when you consider that we talked about Knight Rider and Alf, but maybe it is the most influential show we talked about. I'm willing to listen to the argument at least.
Well, yeah, maybe on a certain sector.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Alf is influential on a certain sector too.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, Knight Rider is too.
It certainly is.
Yeah, I'll tell you about a Knight Rider thing I watched off air.
Oh, wow!
We've already spent enough time on Gilligan's Island on this episode about the Mary Tyler Moore show. So,
fair enough.
Yeah.
So, who's the straight man? Who's the entertainer on our podcast, Mike?
Oh, I don't know. I think it varies.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
It depends on how you define a straight man. There are different, like in the Ted Gordy straight man setup, the straight man is the idiot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Like Abbott and Costello's the idiot.
Yeah. Skipper and Gilligan.
Gilligan's
the idiot.
Yes, yeah. Tom Bradford and
and Nicholas.
I think Nicholas is the idiot.
Wait a minute, who's the idiot?
No, who's on first? Wait, who's playing first?
I don't know.
Third base. Yeah. So join us next week for Lou Grant.
Yes. And maybe we'll actually talk about Lou Grant.
Yeah. And its connections to the Brady Bunch.
Exactly. This episode brought to you by WJM-TV. Check out our new friendly format. What's that? Check out the news with Ted Baxter, solid as ever. This episode also brought to you by Minneapolis-St. Paul. We think it's time someone set a show here again. This episode also brought to you by the Los Angeles Tribune, now hiring at the city desk. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.